I thought rather than putting up my usual spiel, I'd do something a little bit light-hearted and have a bit of fun about it. So, okay, open source hardware building blocks, Lego for the Internet of Things. So here's a blast from the past. Here's a board that I made 25 years ago. I actually sat there on a Saturday afternoon in July of 1985 whilst watching Live Aid on a 9-inch black and white telly, and I wired this mother up. And hardware back then was hard. It was like 40-pin chips and loads of Kynar wire and all sorts. And the irony is that this 6 or 8 chip monster can be reduced down to something that's about 2 inches square now. So, undaunted, this is what set me off in my career as a hardware engineer. And round about that time, I sort of coined the phrase, wouldn't it be great if you could just put chips together like Lego and it just worked? So, here we go. If hardware was as simple as Lego, it would be just a case of sticking a few blocks together. So, you're probably aware of my involvement with the Nanode project. We're trying to do a number of things within the Internet of Things space. We're trying to make open source hardware as simple as Lego. We want to make it low cost, available and accessible to all, and try and kickstart the Internet of Things. And in mid-August, I was at a particular venue. Andy Piper was there, and he will remember that, to sum up Nanode, it's the minimalist piece of hardware that allows you to get your project onto the internet. And that's something that we're striving for. So, you can make whatever you wanted out of Lego. And I must say, on Friday afternoon last week, I went out and bought this box of Lego. And I think it was £10.99. And I had a great time over the weekend sort of putting stuff together and photographing and all the rest of it. So, reconnect with your inner child, go out and buy some Lego. It's not too late. Okay, right. So with Lego, you can quickly try out a few ideas, even if they don't always make complete sense. Maybe it's a case of RTFM. Anyway, okay. But if you start with the right platform, you can build up all sorts of new applications. And so very quickly I discovered that the lid of the box was actually a platform, and it was useful for building stuff on. Okay, so quickly and easily from this platform you can then build whatever you want. And then, to stretch the analogy beyond its elastic limits, you can then develop the functionality in little blocks of code which are tried and tested and familiar and all the rest of it. Okay, so, right. It's the same with open source hardware. Start with an 8-bit micro, which I've cunningly concealed within a few blocks of Lego there, which is basically the building block of everyday technology. You may all be walking around with smartphones in your pockets that maybe got 2 or 3 32-bit micros in, but the nitty-gritty of today's world is still done with simple, cheap 8-bit micros. And this is basically the starting point that I want to build the foundations of my particular field of interaction within the Internet of Things. Okay. So, design your platform. Ooh, that looks familiar. And going back, not 25 years, but I must say, here's one I did earlier. This was the very first Nanode that was built in summer of last year, and really it's just 3 chips on a breadboard. I lashed it up in an evening, and it was sort of like serving its first web page within a couple of hours. And the great thing, it was under 20 quid. And having built this thing, I thought, ooh, there's an idea. So well, I went off and did something else for 6 months, and then I came back to it in March because Ben here at a certain event in Shoreditch, she said, why don't you do something with that idea you had last year? So off I went and I made the first prototypes, and we went on to build 1,600 of these, and we've sold them worldwide, and yeah, they're going down a treat. Okay, so yeah, the one at the top's a bit chunky, but you know, it's for our Lego is a real good prototyping tool, you know. Okay, so start with the right platform, and so I put together the Nanode 5. There weren't 4 predecessors, there was about 2 predecessors, but a couple of them didn't really get made. Okay, so Nanode 5, it's a simple platform on which to build your Internet of Things ideas. It kickstarts you, it gets you going. So it's basically an 8-bit microcontroller that's got some easy, accessible interfaces on it. We've got the Ethernet, connects up to the cloud. As with all Arduino compatible devices, it's fundamentally a serial communicating device. But one or two other things I threw in just because it was easy. I put some extra SRAM, so we're able to download sketches online and reflash the firmware. And a wired serial network that was something we tried but hasn't readily been adopted. And on the extreme right there, the optional wireless. Well, it turns out that the wireless was going to be increasingly important, so after 1,600 boards in about 3 months, we decided it was time to come up with something new. So we sort of morphed the Nanode 5 into the Nanode RF, and we threw away the clunky screw terminals and we replaced them with a little 868 meg wireless module, but essentially the same board. And we also threw in a bit more hardware. We decided that the way this was going, it was going to be the 8-bit micro, and we had an SPI bus with all the peripherals hanging off the SPI bus. So we've got the wireless module. We also added a real-time clock. We put a micro SD card in there for people who want to do data logging, and again the SRAM for online sketch upload. And that's how it pans out on the board. Now, wearing one of my other hats, I think it's very important to get young people involved in making stuff. And one of the philosophies behind the Nanode was that it was all through-hole, readily accessible technology. Give a 15-year-old a soldering iron and a couple of hours, and they will put one of these together, and they will serve their first web page. And there is a movement ever present in the UK now where it's getting more and more important that we encourage kids to start coding. And I feel that this sort of technology where you give this to some secondary school pupils and they build it themselves and they learn a bit about real programming, I think it's tremendously important. So, having built the Nanode RF, I had to complement it with a very low-cost sensor cum actuator node. So, came up with the Y-node. It's not Wino, it's Y-node, which again, it's built on the general, the same sort of Arduino philosophy. It's got the Arduino Shield connectors there. You program it with the Arduino IDE, but we can do 2 of these. We can do a pair of these for £30, which we think is pretty good value. And we've got a real-time clock. We've got a 2 amp dual H-bridge for driving motors, relays, steppers, and we've got some easy to use screw terminals so you can just stick wires in and get sensing and get actuating. Okay, so here's what we've got on Nanode. We've got the wireless, we've got the microcontroller, we've got the H-bridge for the power, and we've got the same SRAM and real-time clock. And that's that in a nutshell. And just before I wrap up, as Mike said earlier, we've been nominated for Best Internet of Things Project 2011, and voting closes at 5 p.m. on Friday. And if you Google Postscapes, you will find us there. And finally, I'd just like a big thanks to everybody that has supported me over the last 8 months or so with the Nanode project. It really is a collaborative venture between different disciplines. I do the hardware. Friends of mine, they come up with the various firmware. We've got all the guys at Patch Bay who provide a wonderful service to get us up onto the cloud. Then there are people who are out spending their evenings developing applications and sketches and stuff to make all this hang together. So I've sort of listed most of the key co-conspirators there, and I'd just like to say that as of today we have a new website, which is nanode.biz, and also we have a new startup venture, nanodesign.com. Now don't log on there because there's nothing on there yet, but there will be. So that's it. I'd just like to thank you again for all your patience, and have a really great Christmas.